Masters.
Good day to you, partner. I'm Guy, and I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken cave.
Hey guys, Wheat Solo here, aka the Skeleton King. Today we're going to have a little breakdown on normal maps versus fortified maps and their place in the meta, especially how it plays for a summon necro, in particular, and why it would matter for other classes more. Now, Woogs and I disagreed on this a little bit. He seemed to think fortified maps were going to be the better option, and we also disagreed on the minion choices to use. It's funny, he actually thought that fire golems would be better for fortified maps, and fire golems would be better for normal maps and revives, while I was the opposite. I felt like fire golem revives would be broken for fortified. In my opinion, if you're running fire golems, the 10-yard AoE pulse that ticks pretty slowly, you want less monsters. And then guess what? All those monsters that remain after that tick, the council member Hydras will finish them off. I actually think it's going to be insane for that build to run fortified maps. You wouldn't do anything else. Also, your single target DPS, you've seen a lot of videos of me recently using Ghoul Lords, and Ghoul Lords are really, really good. But if you're just talking about single target DPS, there is no summon in the game even close to council member Hydras. What's the problem with Hydras? Well, they're single target damage. So if there's a bunch of mobs on the screen, they don't really seem like they're doing that much. But like in-game, they have a huge, huge role for a class that already has access to quality ranged minions. So let's talk about having access to ranged minions or being a ranged class or having spells and the issues that causes with certain melee-focused builds, like, let's say just the most obvious, Zeal Necro. Okay, that would count, but we're not going to talk about that. Zeal, Paladin, right? Smiters, although no one's ever going to play Smite, but you get the point. Fury Druids, Bear Druids, these sort of high DPS classes that are, even with melee splash, just can't hit a large enough section of the screen to really compete. Like, the only melee class that really can do high density pretty well is a Whirlwind Barb with a two-hand, because it actually has the biggest fucking hitbox you've ever seen in your life, and it's almost like you can just whirlwind one path through some maps like sewers and just most of the enemies will die. You don't even got to worry about it. But then you have like a thing like Throw Barb, which, yes, they're very good and they can go like max DPS. The problem is they have to attack so many sections of the screen. It doesn't matter how good they are in P8. For P1, they're a little underwhelming. Now, Throw Barbs did post a lot of good times this season, and that's because they started using Enigma, dropping DPS to basically have access to a now busted item. Should they keep Enigma as good as they have it right now? Well, Enigma was an admission that Teleport was unbalanced, and I think that's still generally the case. I don't care that a lot of classes have access to fairly good teleports, some better than others. A Blood Warp takes a lot of points, but it's still good. Gust, Joust, etc. Blink teleport is just by far the best skill in the game to this day. That's why Sorks are the best day one class. They will always be the best day one class. Teleport is just that good. But let's say a class like Throwbarb doesn't want to run Enigma and blink around and, kind of ruin some of the identity of their class. Well, you have a fortified map. And this is actually a big topic this whole season, was like, we need to nerf ranged spellcasters, buff melee, or do something to make it more worth it to play them for solo mapping. Well, the dev team came up with Fortified, which is actually a pretty good idea. You're going to reduce the density by half, but basically double the health of all mobs, and then increase their damage slightly. I'm not sure if their damage is how it's intended to work, but basically monsters do a bit more damage, but the bosses smack. And that's my only issue with Fortified right now. And that's really because some bosses in PD2 are completely imbalanced. As a guy who played Diablo 3, Rift Guardians were something they never fixed while I played. Some could be cheesed or were just easy, and then others were constant threats no matter where you were on the screen and could just one-shot you at any point. It's the stupidest thing. And honestly, PD2 has a couple bosses like that. Ancestral, this boss is actually pretty dangerous. And in the Fortified map, you'll see that he's actually going to kill a lot of the archers. So now, classes with access or with less access to large AoE abilities can now compete a little more solo. I don't think it's going to be like ever as good, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, and it will definitely noticeably help anybody who just, wants to play a Zealer or a Fury Druid. It'll be the only option, and it'll be much, much better. Now, where does it stand for Summoner? If you compare this video to the next one, the times are pretty similar. This is a sub 6, the next is a 6-minute 20. I think most of the time lost in the second one is because the boss just wrecks a lot of the skellies too much, and also Topwood decides to use Life Tap over Decrepify, thinking that would keep the archers alive, which is just really not the case. Archers, it doesn't matter if they attack, about once per second, and that's how much they attack. It's like the boss is going to do enough damage that they're going to die before they can regen. The reason warriors are still so tanky in-game is, yes, they actually have less health than mages, don't even ask me, but the reason they appear to be so tanky, or are so tanky, is because they have incredibly high regen. That's kind of like a hidden stat that a lot of people don't understand. Mages actually have like almost no regen. Golems have a little bit, revives have a little bit, and then I'm assuming archers are designed around mages and have almost none. Either way, there's no way to keep them alive with Life Tap. Life Tap is really for your warriors or clay golems or revives while fighting Ubers, or maybe even while you're budget. But trying to use Life Tap on a boss like this probably isn't going to help. So he loses a bit of time because the boss is so rough. And as you can see, there is way less minions in this map, but it's a pretty similar map. It's actually kind of cool, to be honest. And we had a little conversation about what decision or what direction summoners should take. Like, for instance, a Summon Druid, who has no access to quality range minions, should not do normal. They should do Fortified. They will do much better there, especially because they can go bear form, and they'll be so tanky, even if the boss does more damage, they will never fucking die, as long as they just use bear form, like, God intended. Sure, there's the issues with Gust, so, in-game, but then in-game you're not going to die anyways, so this would be more of a thing for, while you're a little more budget. But Topwood, for some reason, felt like Fire Golem's Revives would be better for normal, while this build would be better for Fortified. And I took the complete opposite opinion. Here's the boss, by the way. You'll notice him doing quite a bit of damage and killing the archers, mages, just everything. Revives get smashed. I actually think that Fire Golems plus Revives will be better for Fortified, and that's because Fire Golems have a consistent 10-yard pulse. They'll clear a nice area that's there, and then guess what? Well, your council members will have the single target DPS to help finish off stragglers. There'll be less of them because it's Fortified, and it will help you kill the boss faster. Now, council members are not just a simple do-it-all minion. They are specifically for one thing: high single target DPS or finishing stragglers based around Hydra. If you try to use council members and don't use them well, then they're not going to have the same effect as just going like Moon Lords, for instance, or even Ghoul Lords. But yes, they are the best summon, but there's a reason why you haven't been seeing me using them at certain points recently in certain videos. They have a role, it's a very specific role, and they're very good at it, but they can't just do everything. Regardless of which build you think would be better for which, I actually think that Fortified maps will be the endgame likely for Summoner Necro. His gear is actually pretty far off BIS. He's at like 50 skills. It's quite easy for most players to get 55. We disagree on this a bit, but 55 to 60, whatever, most players can get around there. And at that point, your warrior splash and ranged, it might be that normal is better. But we can go there at that point anyways. Anything else to talk about? Leorics is just clearly the best item in the game now for a summoner, at least for snapping. Now, technically, +1 skill is about equal to +3 mastery. So technically, a +7 mage wand or a +7 archer wand would be better than Leorics. But it's such a small difference, I would never argue over it. Are the +2 warriors worth it? Probably not. I'd probably use something to get FCR, Phoenix, I don't know, just anything else. But it's kind of like use it at first and then change it out later. Besides that, that's pretty much it. He did mess up his swap. He wasn't using Trang's Gloves, so he wasn't at 75 SCR. And regardless of in-game, Triker Skelliemancer will be just better next season based around the buffs to archers. Will they retain that buff? I'm not sure, but archers basically last season were better than mages in a vacuum. The reason why mages were generally seen more often is they kind of just fit the elemental builds easier, while archers just really need Faith, Teamite, Heart of the Wolverine, Pride IG. Anyways, I joined the stream. I'll let Topwig finish it off from here. Alright guys, Skelly King out. GG.
Definitely feels weird to run a fortified map. Because, like, it's so empty, but... I think the actual neat thing is that if you accidentally roll like a double density map, like a huge one that you kind of would turn down on a summoner before, you can now just fortify it, and then it'll basically be half that density, and it would kind of be perfect. So rolling a high density is kind of good on a summoner now again. I don't know, if you have more AoE damage with like fire golems and that kind of stuff, ghoul lords, you can kind of handle the high density maps. That's kind of why we made the elemental summoner. And if you use things like golems as well, you get some additional splash around you. But in general, the high density ones, it's just your archers and your mages just target too many mobs, and it's not really focusing down, so it's kind of where they struggle. This is nice because you can really actually stomp things. My champions and stuff do take a little bit of damage. Hey, water lost man, how's it going? This is beta, yeah. Yeah, it might be true wheat, but I found that fire golems were actually pretty good with the help with your density, like on an optimal summoner. So I mean, like archers, fire golems plus revives. Like you can do a decent one. But this is a T3 now, wheat, so this is actually pretty good. As you saw, it's T3 fortified. It got a nerf, but so the new Leorics looks like this. I mean, the last one I did as well had archers, right? It was archers, fire golems, revives. But archers, mages also worked. Sorry, mages, revives, fire golems also worked. So this is a new Leorics. You lost the additional 2 mages, but you kind of gained additional skill rolls that you can have down there. So it's a decent +1. My skills is not optimal. I'm missing some corruptions and stuff, but I'm at 52, 51, 50, 50. So pretty good. Decent. I mean, this is not really. I didn't snapshot. Actually, I did this. This is what it should be. I didn't snapshot at all, so you definitely could get higher than that. So it's pretty good. I mean, I don't know, wheat. I'm pretty. Yeah, but not everyone's gonna snapshot and stuff. Is what I mean. I know of 3 people that have ever gotten the quote-unquote perfect skills. I think 55, 56 you should always aim for. I think that's definitely achievable for anybody. But 60 plus I think is, Yeah. I mean, like, definitely you could have one more in the circlet. Easy because you use a +3 normal blue, so +4 with +1 all skills. 2 here, so that's your additional 4 that you're missing. 1 on your shield, that's your additional 5 you're missing. You get 2 here. Well, sorry, 1 here actually. 1 here, and then if you had snapshot ones and stuff like that, 1 on your any. So yeah. Okay, I think this is good, Wheat. I think that was fine enough. We can see that it can definitely do fortified maps, so I'm happy with that. I don't remember what the next thing... I think you wanted to do that brand bear nonsense, right? But do you know what I actually have to build for that? Like, besides the large charms and stuff, and a brand, obviously. What's, like, the armor that you're using? This is a pure level 99 build, pretty much, because I'm doing 20 curse mastery, then 1 point into all my curses, an extra point here, and then 20, 20, 20, 20. I have the same build on live, but I don't have Skelly Mastery maxed. So I do the 20, 20, 20, 1 point, and then 20 Curse Mastery, and I just use all the leftover points into Skelly Mastery. I'm also using Enigma over Trangs, only because I just don't want a Blood Warp. But you can get away with Blood Warp, but you just have to do a little bit more pots and stuff, but I kind of like it. Normally I snapshot it in Exile as well, but I just doing this quick on beta, so on my live one I have an Exile as well that I put on, just to get the Defiance Aura as well. I should have put these on for mapping, because that would get me to 75 faster cast rate. But basically I'm just using the Perfect Leorics, 220 Circlet, just with some res FHR, Mara's Bone Flame. Meryl walks with a +1 only because I rolled it once, so it's not even BIS. You know, SOJ, Wisp, Arachnid, Enigma, Grave Palm, CTA Lidless, Grand Charms, Torch Annie, some defense and FHR life, small charms, back res, and whip 3 skills.
Come and play with us, Daddy.